New York Yankees. Donald Trump is the New York Yankees, the team with the most World Series wins, the man who dominated headlines like no one else. Whether you love them or hate them, you can't escape them. The Yankees spend more money than anyone, collect more trophies than anyone, and have fans who act like it's still 2000 even when they go a decade without winning anything. Just like Trump, they built their brand on being the biggest, loudest, and flashiest. They wear pinstripes like a designer suit, and when they win, they tell you they won over and over and over. Seattle Mariners. Joe Biden is the Seattle Mariners. A long career. Mostly underwhelming, but somehow still going. Biden finally got elected president after decades of trying. And the Mariners finally made the playoffs in 2022 after 2 decades of failure. But the celebration was less, we did it, and more finally. They both operate in a weird haze of nostalgia. People remember Biden from 2008, people remember the Mariners from 2001, but the new era isn't really inspiring much confidence. You want to root for them. You want it to work, but most of the time, you just feel like they're asleep at the wheel. Los Angeles Dodgers. Franklin D. Roosevelt is the Los Angeles Dodgers. Historic, resilient, dominant for years. FDR led America through the Great Depression and World War II, and the Dodgers have been leading baseball through basically every National League season. They're built to win 100 games. Just like FDR's 4 terms, they don't go away. Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier was their new deal, a monumental shift in how the sport functioned. The only problem, like Roosevelt's complicated legacy, their October results aren't always perfect, but regular season, power, depth, poise, they're the ones setting the standard. Boston Red Sox. John Adams is the Boston Red Sox, the team and the president who were both defined by being second. Adams followed Washington. The Red Sox play second fiddle to the Yankees, and they hate it. Adams spent most of his presidency fighting political rivals. The Red Sox spent 86 years fighting the curse of the Bambino, but when they finally broke through in 2004, they did it loud. Just like Adams, who got the last word through letters and legacy, they're bitter, they're brilliant. And whether it's Fenway Park or 18th century Boston, they make sure history never forgets them. Houston Astros. Andrew Jackson is the Houston Astros. Popular, powerful, and permanently controversial. Jackson won battles. The Astros won World Series, but both did it with a cloud overhead. Jackson ignored norms and bulldozed enemies. The Astros, well, let's just say trash cans aren't just for garbage. 2017 was their Battle of New Orleans, a triumphant victory that still sparks debate. And even now, they're dominant. Just like Jacksonian democracy, it's hard to tell if this is reform or revenge. But make no mistake, they've taken over. And whether you approve or not, they're not giving up control anytime soon. New York Mets. Lyndon B. Johnson is the New York Mets. When it works, it really works. But when it doesn't, it's disaster. LBJ passed the Civil Rights Act and won in a landslide. The Mets won the 1969 and 1986 World Series with teams that felt like destiny. But then came Vietnam. Then came the collapses. The Bobby Bonilla contract, the 2007 choke, the 2023 disaster. You can't talk about either without mentioning both brilliance and self-destruction. And now, like LBJ not seeking re-election, the Mets have the possibility to kind of fade into the background if they don't lead the right way. Big moments, bigger collapses, always dramatic. Chicago Cubs. Jimmy Carter is the Chicago Cubs. Sincere, honest, painfully unlucky. Carter's presidency was marked by inflation, oil crises, and hostage situations. The Cubs spent over a century marked by blown leads, black cats, and goats. But just like Carter's post-presidency rebuilt his image, the 2016 Cubs finally broke through. They were the underdogs America could root for, and it felt good for a moment. But since then, it's been mostly decline. Carter never got reelected. The Cubs never built a dynasty. They're likable, historic, and haunted by potential they never fully turned into power. Atlanta Braves. George Washington is the Atlanta Braves, the first, the foundation, the franchise that proved consistency can be greatness. Washington set the precedent. The Braves won 14 straight division titles, calm, steady, and always prepared. They don't make noise, they make history. Their 2021 World Series run, crossing the Delaware, tactical, unexpected, and perfectly executed. From Hank Aaron to Ronald Acuna Jr., the Braves build legacies, not drama. You don't talk about them enough, but without them, nothing else works. Like Washington stepping down after 2 terms, they show you how to win and then move on with dignity. or bot. San Diego Padres. John F. Kennedy is the San Diego Padres. Charismatic, full of promise, gone too soon. JFK inspired a nation. The Padres inspired a fan base. They had Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado, Juan Soto. It was Camelot and cleats, but it fell apart just as fast. JFK's presidency ended in tragedy. The Padres' dream team ended in injury, underperformance, and locker room tension. You remember the good looks, the energy, the hope, but the results? They never quite matched the hype. You want them to be great, but just like Kennedy, the myth ends up bigger than the legacy. Philadelphia Phillies. Harry Truman is the Philadelphia Phillies. No nonsense, no flash, just results. Truman dropped the bomb. The Phillies signed Bryce Harper. Both made instant impact. Truman wasn't supposed to win in 1948. The Phillies weren't supposed to win the NL in 2022, but they showed up when it mattered. Tough, scrappy, capable of making one massive decision that changes everything. You may not trust them to lead for decades, but for one moment, they're exactly what you need. Just like Truman, the Phillies proved that underdogs can still shape history, and sometimes blow the whole thing wide open. Chicago White Sox. Richard Nixon is the Chicago White Sox. Both are defined by scandal. Nixon had Watergate, the White Sox had the Black Sox. Even when they win, people squint at the legitimacy. Nixon opened China, ended Vietnam, created the EPA. The White Sox broke their 88-year drought in 2005, and yet, people still talk about what went wrong. From shoeless Joe Jackson to steroid-era slugging, there's always an asterisk nearby. Nixon was a brilliant operator who couldn't stop sabotaging himself. The White Sox are a storied team that can't escape their own messy shadow. St. Louis Cardinals. Dwight Eisenhower is the saint. Louis Cardinals. Stable, respected, timeless. Eisenhower built the interstate highway system. The Cardinals built a fan base that spans the Midwest like a baseball superhighway. They've got 11 championships, second only to the Yankees. Eisenhower won World War II. The Cardinals won titles in almost every decade. Both run on quiet dominance and traditional values. They don't flash headlines. They just show up in October, shake your hand, and win. Like Ike balancing Cold War tensions, the Cardinals always feel composed. When baseball historians talk eras, they always stop to salute the Redbirds. San Francisco Giants. Teddy Roosevelt is the San Francisco Giants. Rough riding, chaotic, unforgettable. Roosevelt charged up San Juan Hill. The Giants charged through the early 2000s and 10s with 3 World Series titles in 5 years. Like Teddy, they're never boring. Willie Mays made the greatest catch in baseball history. Barry Bonds hit more home runs than anyone. Roosevelt hunted bears, the Giants hunt legends. They changed coasts, changed stadiums, changed stars, but always kept that pioneer energy. One moment they're fighting corruption, the next they're breaking records. Not always pretty, not always polished, but when they strike, it's headline stuff. Los Angeles Angels. Gerald Ford is the Los Angeles Angels. They had stars, they had the spotlight, and then they just fell. Ford followed Nixon, the Angels followed Trout and Ohtani. You thought it might work. You hoped the pieces would click. But Ford never got elected, and the Angels never made the playoffs with the 2 best players of their era. Injuries, mismanagement, bad timing. Ford pardoned Nixon. The Angels pardoned failure. And now, both are mostly remembered for what could have been. A lot of talent, a lot of potential, but no rings, no mandate, no lasting run. Oakland Athletics. Thomas Jefferson is the Oakland A's. Brilliant, idealistic, economically obsessed. Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. The A's wrote the book on analytics. Moneyball was their constitution. Small market ideals in a big budget league. But Jefferson had also had contradictions. Slave owner, revolutionary, the A's have contradictions. Championships and payroll cuts. They won 3 straight titles in the 70s. Now they're moving to Vegas. Jefferson bought Louisiana. The A's bought time. Both tried to expand frontiers without losing their soul, and both are debated endlessly. Were they geniuses held back by circumstance, or just too stubborn to change? Texas Rangers. William Henry Harrison is the Texas Rangers. Big debut, big hope, immediate collapse. Harrison gave the longest inauguration speech ever, then died 31 days later. The Rangers got within a strike of winning the 2011 World Series, then lost. twice. The heartbreak was historical, but here's the twist. The Rangers came back. In 2023, they finally won it all. They outlasted Arizona. They rewrote their fate. So maybe they started as Harrison, but now maybe they're Zachary Taylor, one-term legend. Who knows? But for a long time, they were the team that got pneumonia right before the parade. Tampa Bay Rays. James K. Polk is the Tampa Bay Rays. Not flashy, not popular, but terrifyingly effective. Polk annexed Texas, grabbed Oregon, and won the Mexican-American War in one term. The Rays don't have titles, but they win 90 games with rookies you've never heard of. Small budget, doesn't matter. They'll outsmart you. They'll outpitch you. Like Polk redrawing America's map, the Rays redraw how baseball gets played. And just like Polk, they leave chaos behind. Stars traded, payroll slashed, fans wondering what just happened. But the impact? Massive. You don't have to love them. You just have to fear them. Milwaukee Brewers. Martin Van Buren is the Milwaukee Brewers. Likeable, forgettable, always in the middle. Van Buren was a brilliant political operator, just not a great president. The Brewers are a solid franchise, just not a threatening one. They made the World Series once, they're usually decent. They'll give you a Christian Yelich MVP season or a fun playoff run, then disappear. No scandals, no dynasty, just vibes. Van Buren spoke Dutch. The Brewers speak OPS+. You won't find many haters, but you won't find many rings either. They're just there. Never bad enough to boo, never great enough to fear. Baltimore Orioles. James Madison is the Baltimore Orioles. Underrated architect, quiet legend. Madison wrote the Constitution. The Orioles built Cal Ripken Jr. 1 set the rules. The other never missed a game. The O's had power in the 60s and 70s, disappeared in the 90s, and now, suddenly, they're back. Just like Madison in the War of 1812. Bombs dropped, flags still waving, Camden Yards still standing. They don't always get credit, but when they build something, it lasts. Like Madison forming government coalitions, the Orioles form farm systems that produce stars. Watch closely. They're smarter than you think. Pittsburgh Pirates. John Quincy Adams is the Pittsburgh Pirates. Legendary name. Historic bloodline. Forgotten in the modern age. JQA was the son of a president. The Pirates have 5 titles, but nobody under 30 remembers either doing anything meaningful. Adams had ideals. The Pirates had Roberto Clemente. Adams clashed with Congress. The Pirates clash with modern baseball economics. They still have moments, cue Paul Skeen's rookie highlight reel, but they can't seem to build momentum. JQA went from president to congressman. The Pirates went from champion to rebuild, once elite, now niche, and the saddest part, they know it. Cleveland Guardians. James Monroe is the Cleveland Guardians, defined by calm but carrying history. Monroe had the era of good feelings. The Guardians had the era of almosts. They don't win much, but they don't implode either. Monroe warned Europe to back off the Western Hemisphere. Cleveland warns the AL Central, we're never out of it. They haven't won a World Series since 1948, but they've been close. 1997, 2016, extra innings, game 7s. They're a franchise of near misses and generational aces. Quiet confidence, strong roots, and just like Monroe, they stick around way longer than anyone realizes. Detroit Tigers. Ulysses S. Grant is the Detroit Tigers. Battle-tested, beaten down, still standing. Grant won the Civil War. The Tigers won 4 rings, but both saw glory before the real struggles began. Grant's presidency was riddled with scandals. The Tigers spent the 2010s with bloated payrolls and wasted talent. Now they're rebuilding. Grant's legacy got reappraised. Maybe Detroit's will too. They've got history, Ty Cobb, Al Kaline, and new blood like Tarek Skubal. They're not dead yet, just waiting for that next big charge. Like Grant at Vicksburg, when they strike, it's sudden, aggressive, and unforgettable. Like Kansas City Royals, Andrew Johnson is the Kansas City Royals. One brief, controversial peak and a long, confusing legacy. Johnson followed Lincoln, the Royals followed George Brett, they won in 1985, then vanished. Suddenly, 2015, a miracle title. Contact hitting, defense, magic. Like Johnson's accidental presidency, it didn't feel sustainable, and it wasn't. The Royals dropped off a cliff again. Small market, bad contracts, endless rebuild. Johnson got impeached. The Royals get ignored, but for that one moment, they were the kings. Just long enough to be remembered, just messy enough to be debated. Minnesota Twins. James Buchanan is the Minnesota Twins, consistently in position to do absolutely nothing. Buchanan sat back as the nation unraveled. The Twins win divisions, then collapse immediately. 18 straight playoff losses. Think about that. You could be born, graduate college, and never see them win a postseason game. Buchanan's failure led to the Civil War. The Twins' failures lead to another ALDS sweep. And yet, they've got history. Harmon Killebrew, Kirby Puckett. They've got talent, but they freeze when it matters. If meh was a political strategy or a baseball team, it's Buchanan. It's the Twins. Toronto Blue Jays. John Tyler is the Toronto Blue Jays. They're technically part of the system, but always feel a little outside of it. Tyler was a president without a party. The Blue Jays are Canada's only team, and yet they've had moments. Back-to-back titles in the early 90s, Joe Carter's walk-off homer, pure Americana, delivered by a non-American team. But like Tyler, their legacy is murky. Feels like they're either rebuilding or barely making the playoffs. Good pieces, great history, but no clear identity. You root for them, but don't quite understand what they're doing. Arizona Diamondbacks. Barack Obama is the Arizona Diamondbacks. Instant impact. Historic start. Obama was elected in 2008. The D-backs won the World Series in 2001. Just their fourth season. Both had a moment that felt like a reset. Luis Gonzalez's bloop single, Obama's Grant Park speech. But maintaining that magic, harder. The D-backs have been up and down since. Obama faced gridlock and backlash. Both still get respect, but their legacies are a little quieter than their openings promised. The foundation's there. They might rise again, but their most iconic moment came early. Colorado Rockies. Millard Fillmore is the Colorado Rockies. You forget they exist until they're suddenly on the wrong side of history. Fillmore signed the Fugitive Slave Act. The Rockies lost the 2007 World Series after a miracle run. Neither moment aged well. The Rockies hit bombs at altitude, but can't build pitching. Fillmore tried compromise, it failed. Colorado tries balance, it fails. There's occasional brilliance, Larry Walker, Todd Helton, but it's mostly wasted in thin air. Fillmore got buried by history books. The Rockies get buried in the NL West. Nobody hates them, nobody fears them, just vibes. And cold bats, Miami Marlins. Chester A. Arthur is the Miami Marlins. Nobody expected anything. And then they won, twice. Arthur was a party hat. The Marlins were an expansion team. Arthur cleaned up government. The Marlins cleaned up in 1997 and 2003. Wild cards, Cinderella stories, and then fire sales, gone, ghosted. Arthur didn't run for re-election. The Marlins didn't keep their stars. They vanish after every success. And yet, they have 2 rings. That's more than the Padres, Brewers, or Mariners. You can mock the franchise all you want. Just remember, they did it. Twice. Washington Nationals. Zachary Taylor is the Washington Nationals, a military hero who barely had time to rule. Taylor died 16 months in. The Nationals had one epic run in 2019. That's it. One title, one dominant postseason. Then they lost Scherzer, Rendon, Strasburg to injuries, and Juan Soto. Now they're rebuilding again. But in that moment, Taylor at Buena Vista, the Nats in October, they were elite. Everything worked. They beat the Dodgers, Cardinals, and Astros. And then like Taylor, they disappeared, just long enough to be remembered, just brief enough to feel like a fluke. Cincinnati Reds. Benjamin Harrison is the Cincinnati Reds, an old school name with a legacy you have to explain. Harrison was between 2 Clevelands. The Reds are between eras. They were dominant in the 70s, the Big Red Machine. They won 5 titles, and now they're rebuilding again. Ellie De La Cruz gives hope, but history is what defines them. Pete Rose, Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, like Harrison's grandfather William Henry, they matter more in context. You don't learn about them first, but if you stick around, you realize this name's been here a long, long time. If you like this video, you'll probably be interested in what each MLB franchise would be if they were an infamous movie villain. So check this next one out.